This episode of Inside Golf Podcast is brought to you by Inside Sports Network.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Boston Capital Twitter, Steve, on the Hold the Green podcast.
All right, we are live. Tapping birdie.
All right, Carson Young is here.
I bet Ludwig at 28.
Let's go. I
bet him
at 25.
Low sevens. I think there's some guys in here we like.
Harris English at 7,300.
I love Brian Harman at 3.5% this week.
What's up, guys? It's producer Cam here. ISN is now partnered with Shorty's Golf. Shorty's Golf is designed to provide kids with the perfect introduction to the game of golf by offering high-quality clubs and equipment specifically tailored to their need. They offer custom sizes for various age groups, ensuring that the kids have clubs that are tailored to their height and strength. They feature fun, vibrant colors and lightweight stand bags that are easily adjustable. Each set features real stainless steel clubs, high-quality materials, and sturdy construction, making them long-lasting while providing a real golf experience. So go check them out, golfshorties.com. Use ISN15 at checkout for $15 off your purchase.
Okay, welcome in Inside Golf Podcast, RBC Canadian Open betting and DFS preview at TPC Toronto. This is our bread and butter. These events where the golf course is brand new and we have no data on it. I feel like these are the weeks that I can provide the most value for people. So while I have had quite a busy couple of days with some family stuff, I am fired up to talk about TPC Toronto, even though I have not been super impressed with the architecture of this golf course compared to previous Canadian Open venues. And I can tell you off the top right now, this is a very different golf course than some of the previous Canadian Open venues that we've had, such as, Hamilton, Oakdale, St. George's, etc. My apologies in advance that I am ripping this from my computer and I don't have my regular recording equipment. I'm in New York right now. This is a background you will see quite a bit over the next couple of months that I will be in New York, but I'm just here for the weekend. I'm actually about to hop on a flight back to LA as soon as I finish recording this, but I came just for the weekend because my uncle is retiring from his job. He was a English teacher and the head lacrosse coach at my boarding school that I went to. And he's been there living on campus with his whole family, my cousins, for 30 years. And, he, being the head lacrosse coach and English teacher, we've always been a really big lacrosse school. A lot of the New England boarding schools have some of the best high school lacrosse programs in the country. And so for his retirement party, all of his former players, there were 500 people there, and they had like a huge lacrosse scrimmage with all of these people that he has coached over the last 30 years. Even one guy, a former student of his and player, came from Bali for the weekend for 2 days, pretty much all to celebrate him. And, my girlfriend and I met at this boarding school when we were 15 years old, and have been together ever since we met there's been some breaks in between. But ever since we met when we were 15 and 16 years old was at this boarding school. And so it's a very, very special place for us, not just because my cousins and uncle taught there and have lived there for my entire life. So we spend all of our holidays there and Christmases and Thanksgivings. But it's also where, I met my current girlfriend. And so it's a really special place for us as well. So anyway, we came in for the weekend because there was this huge retirement party for my uncle. And it was awesome because all of his former players, guys that he coached in the 90s, the early 2000s, across a 30-year span where he was the head lacrosse coach, all came in to celebrate his retirement. And they had like a big lacrosse scrimmage for all of his former players, and then a big party and dinner after. So I would say I'm slightly behind on my normal research and such for the given week, but this was kind of a big deal for us and our family and Natalie and I. So my apologies for not bringing my recording equipment for this 48-hour trip to the New York area, but on the plane ride, I spent a lot of time on TPC Toronto. And so I feel like I have a very strong understanding of the golf course, but in terms of like my early leans and diving into the players that I want to choose, that will be more of a Monday and Tuesday thing for me this week. So I'm going to break down the golf course to my best abilities and give you as much information on the golf course. But in terms of the players that I'm going to end up choosing, definitely a great week to join Inside Sports Network because I'll give kind of the basics and the fundamentals on the golf course, but most of like how I decide what players I'm going to be on and the players that are the best course fits for TPC Toronto and how I really think that golf course is going to play as we get more information throughout the week on the golf course conditions once we see players show up to the event on Monday and Tuesday and get some info from those practice rounds. Great week to join ISN. I can promise you that in terms of being prepared for how the golf course is going to play, you will not find a better community. So if you care about knowing exactly how the golf course is going to play, great week to join ISN. Our 25% off promo is still live for the French Open. So you can type in right now, Garros month, and you will get 25% off for a monthly package at ISN if you want to just sign up for this month. And it's a amazing month to do it because you're going to get all of the info for the Canadian Open that you need. And then obviously next week is Oakmont. So, and Oakmont is like another huge week for us because it's also a golf course that we don't have a ton of data on, right? I mean, even in 2016, we didn't have strokes gained for that event. So I feel like these are the weeks where certainly the Truist was a good example of this, and we nailed the Truist to a T in terms of how that golf course was going to play. These next couple of weeks where it's a golf course that we don't have a ton of data on, these are the weeks we really shine. And these are the weeks where I feel like ISN can provide the most value for you. So join the squad. We would love to have you a part of our fast growing family. And I promise you, in terms of ownership and golf course information, you will not find a place where you're going to be more prepared. In fact, why fly blind, right? If you have the opportunity to know how the golf course is going to play, what skills matter, and get the best ownership, you're just going to be significantly disadvantaged to the hundreds, almost thousands of people that are receiving that information every single week. And these weeks where it's a new golf course like TPC Toronto or Oakmont, these are the weeks where we shine the most. So we'd love to have you join us for this month. Garros month will get you 25% off a monthly package at InsideSportsNetwork.com. So anyway, I haven't been able to watch any of the Memorial. And I guess I'm glad. I mean, I really like the Memorial. I think it's a really good watch on television. I think the golf course presents really well on television and tests professional golfers in a way that we don't usually see all that often on the PGA Tour. And I'm not going to be able to watch any of the final round today either, which is looking like a Scotty coronation because I will be on a plane. But I mean, just a really frustrating week at Memorial in terms of like some guys that I just thought I was going to get a lot more out of. I played 20 guys this week and I got 17 out of the 20 through the cut. So, I got a lot of golfers right and still have a lot of 6 of 6s, but where, and it still could end up being a really good week if my players climb and have a good day today. But I'm going to need them to climb because the players that I thought would be in contention to win the golf tournament are not there. They're going to have to backdoor their way there. I was very, very heavy on Colin Morikawa this week. He was the anchor of all of my lineups at the top because I didn't play Scotty. And oh my goodness gracious, Colin Morikawa, what a letdown. I thought after seeing some of Thursday's round and tracking, I was like, oh my gosh, let's go. Like Colin finally going to get that win that has eluded him for the past, 600 days now, 2+ years without a victory on the PGA Tour. And then he goes out and shoots 77-75 or 75-77 on Friday and Saturday and is like T23. And it's going to be another week where you're going to get, I don't know, maybe if he has a good Sunday, a T10 out of Morikawa. Not good enough. Not what you need. I needed Colin to be up there scoring wise with Scotty Scheffler. And then the other 3 to 4 guys that I was super heavy on, Hideki, Ludwig, Cantlay, and Hovland, those 4 guys above Corey Connors as well. I should put in that category because I was super heavy on Corey Connors and those kind of 5 guys because I chose to take a balanced approach this week and not play Scotty. So a lot of my lineups have they start Morikawa, Ludwig, Hovland, or Morikawa, Cantlay, Decky. And I need more. You need more from them. Hovland, I don't understand why Hovland can't finish top 20 at this golf course. Okay. This is such a good golf course for Victor Hovland. He's played so well at this course in the past. And, these guys like Hovland and Ludwig, and Hideki obviously, of course, as well. But Hideki, I know is more of a volatile player. So I know what I'm getting into with Hideki, where he barely made the cut. He could have easily missed the cut this week. But these guys like Hovland, Cantlay's playing well. Cantlay has held up his end of the bargain. It looks like Cantlay's going to get us a top 10 finish this week. But these guys like Hovland and Ludwig, their ability in these signature events to finish like T40 has been so disappointing this year. And I'm just going to get crushed by by Scotty 6 of 6s because Scotty's going to win. And the strategy that I took this week was I think that all of the guys who missed the cut are going to be at the bottom, right? Because I think that the 7 and 6K range is pretty weak this week. And if you play Scotty Scheffler, then your average remaining salary is 7.3K. So if you play Scotty Scheffler, you're inevitably going to have to live with your other 5 players in the low 7K range and 6K range. And I was right in the sense that there were 15 guys who missed the cut this week, and 14 out of the 15 were below $8,000. Okay. So if you're playing Scotty, all of the guys that missed the cut this week outside of Daniel Berger, who I did play, by the way. So the one guy above 8K that missed the cut, I played. If you're playing Scotty Scheffler this week, you're going to have to dive into a pool of players that have a lot of miscut potential. And as we saw, all the guys essentially that missed the cut were below 8K, but there were more than enough guys at the bottom, and the guys at the top below Scotty that I played, the Ludvigs, Connors, Morikawas, Hovlands, Hidekis, those guys didn't play remotely well enough to hang with Scotty 6 of 6s. And there were enough good players at the bottom where if Scotty wins, I'm just going to get killed by the lone Scotty 6 of 6. And that's two-pronged. A, because the guys that I played in the 9K range didn't play well enough. And B, there weren't enough guys that missed the cut where it was still relatively easy to find at least 4 to 5 guys below 8K that would make the cut. I almost needed like a higher, well, I needed 2 things, like I mentioned, a higher miscut percentage for guys at the bottom. I needed more guys at the bottom to miss the cut. And then mainly the bigger problem was I just needed more out of the balanced guys I played. They're all going to finish somewhere in this tournament between 10th and 45th. And that's not going to cut it for me. So anyway, Scotty, I mean, I totally understand why from a DraftKings game theory lineup construction perspective, I'm comfortable with the decision on taking my chances that I could build better lineups without Scotty Scheffler. I understood why I did that, and I'm okay with the decision. But holy shit, he is just so fucking inevitable. And I knew that because he won me so much money at Quail Hollow, where I just watched him strategically, slowly build rounds and pick apart a golf course over the course of 4 rounds and pick his spots and then make his run over the course of 72 holes on a real golf course. Not many guys can beat him. You can beat Scotty for a round. You can beat him for 2 rounds. You can even beat him for 3 rounds. But if a tournament is 72 holes on a legitimate, difficult, and I think it's going to be a problem at Oakmont. I'm not going to pick him to win the US Open because I think it's really hard to win back-to-back majors. But on these golf courses where it's firm and difficult, and there is an ability to separate oneself with elite iron play, he is so freaking hard to beat. So hard to beat. And this week, again, he's leading the field in approach play. And he has won after a somewhat slow-ish start to the season by his standards. he is the best ball striker in the world and the best iron player in the world by such a healthy margin. And at a golf course like Muirfield Village, which is really the toughest approach golf course on the PGA Tour, he is going to sleepwalk his way into +5 on approach, and he's going to gain like 7, 8, 9 strokes on approach this week. And Muirfield Village might be the easiest golf course on the PGA Tour for Scotty to spike with his irons, because it's such a hard approach golf course that requires such precision approach shots that if you're not a good iron player, you're just going to get killed. And so Scotty, being a great iron player, has an easier time separating with his irons at Muirfield Village than nearly any golf course on the PGA Tour. And that's exactly what happened. So it looks like another Scotty victory. And my gosh, the guys I bet outright were so disappointing. I'm so bummed out at Decky and Corey Connors. I thought I would get a lot more from Finau this week too. Finau was super, super disappointing for me as well. And then who is the other guy I bet? Fitz jumped the gun on that one a little bit too, I would say. I liked what I was seeing from Fitz at the PGA Championship a lot. And I think Muirfield Village is a phenomenal golf course for Fitz. And I think he's viable at Oakmont, certainly. I don't think he's sharp enough to win at a golf course like Oakmont right now and beat Scotty Scheffler over 72 holes. But I do think Fitz is still trending in the right direction and will be a viable DFS play at Oakmont. But that's about all I have to say on the Memorial. Congrats to Scotty, and I wish my outright card and DFS lineups were going to be able to give him a bigger fight. And who knows, I could get a really solid day of climbing today where I end up having an okay week in DFS, because I still have a lot of potential in terms of all of my 6 of 6s, but none of them are scoring enough to be in contention to win the golf tournament. And you can't win any money if you just have 6 guys every week that finish T32. And it's kind of just a 6 guys at T32 week for me, unfortunately. So anyway, let's turn the page to the Canadian Open, what we're all here for, and talk about TPC Toronto at Osprey Valley, because I have some capital T takes on this golf course. So TPC Toronto at Osprey Valley in Caledon, Ontario, Canada, was designed by Doug Carrick in 2001. Not the most decorated architect, not the most talented architect, certainly in terms of designing strategically interesting golf courses and interesting, heavily contoured and undulating green complexes. These are some of the flattest and most boring greens that I have seen on a PGA Tour golf course. There's absolutely nothing to these greens, and I do not think that you particularly need to be a skilled putter to have any success here whatsoever. You're going to need to make some putts, because it's a golf course that is going to have a relatively, it's long, so I'm not going to say that the greens in regulation percentage is going to be high. Like, this is by no means a wedge fest, but the greens in regulation percentage, I believe, is going to be high enough where you're going to have to make some putts. And these are really flat, easy greens to putt on. Bent POA, measuring 65 square feet wide. So they're large as well. Like, for context, Muirfield Village is a golf course of a similar length to this. And Muirfield Village has 5,000 square foot greens, right? So this golf course is a par 70. measuring a hair over 7,400 yards with these bent POA greens. There's some POA in these greens like we see at a lot of northeastern golf courses, like Winged Foot has some POA in their greens as well, but they really play more like bent grass. Bent grass is the dominating grass here. So in terms of modeling out this golf course and looking at reference points from an agronomy standpoint, just because the POA in there, these do not play at all like West Coast POA. Like you do not want to be looking at, and I know people will mess this up because they always mess it up, but bent POA, Northeast bent POA, Travelers has that as well, by the way, is very different from West Coast POA. So just because it has POA in the name, you do not want to be looking at putting splits from Pebble and Riviera and Torrey Pines. You want to be looking at bent grass splits and bent POA splits. So like golf courses like TPC River Highlands, Muirfield Village, John Deere, those are pure TPC River Highlands is bent POA, but even the pure bent grass Northeast golf courses, that's fine. That's basically the surface and agronomy that you want to be looking at. And same deal with the rough. You get that 3.75-inch Kentucky bluegrass rough, which is notable. I mean, that's pretty thick rough. It's not quite Muirfield Village, but the fairways are going to be lined by fairly decently thick rough. And I do believe the missed fairway penalty is going to be on the higher end here. And there actually is, I think that it's going to be a very driver heavy golf course where pretty much on every single one of the par fours, you are going to want to and have to hit driver because a lot of them are very long. But I don't think that you can just bomb away aimlessly at this golf course because the bluegrass rough is thick enough where there's going to be a real advantage for hitting the fairway here. And I do think we will see a decently, at least tour average, probably to a little above tour average, but obviously not quite like a golf course like Muirfield Village. It's probably going to rank around, if I had to guess, 10th to 18th in missed fairway penalty. Muirfield Village is like right inside the top 10. So for context, like in terms of thinking about this golf course compared to what we just saw at Muirfield Village, the rough penalty is not going to be quite as high at Muirfield Village, but it's not super, super far behind. It's still 3.75 inches. That's pretty notable. And the fairways measure 37 yards wide on average. So these are wide fairways. In fact, even a little bit wider than Muirfield Village, which is another golf course with fairly wide fairways as well. So, and water really only comes into play on 3 holes. There's 48 bunkers, and some of the bunkers around the green are quite deep. Like Steve, who I was texting with about the golf course a little bit, who also does such a phenomenal job in terms of breaking down golf courses, and you'll be able to hear his thoughts tonight. We're usually on the same page, but I would say in terms of getting the best golf course information on how the golf course is going to play, if you're listening to this right now and Steve's podcast, you're not going to be more prepared in terms of how the golf course is going to play. And he mentioned like the bunkers kind of remind him a little bit of TPC San Antonio. I thought that was a good pull, where a lot of some of these TPC golf courses, they design these very deep greenside bunkers that are a challenge, where you have to get the ball in the air pretty quickly out of a bunker, which most pros can generally do. But there are some tough real tough greenside bunkers on this golf course as well. And I am looking a little bit at sand saves this week. So anyway, this golf course and the way that I would describe it is the architecture and the required skill set is TPC Craig Ranch. It's TPC Craig Ranch architecture with like Muirfield Village, Oak Hill, Valhalla aesthetics. Okay, so that's the best way that I would describe this golf course is like if you took TPC Craig Ranch's architecture and required skill set and gave it the aesthetics of Muirfield Village, the aesthetics and agronomy of Muirfield Village and Oak Hill and Valhalla. It is a true northeastern bent grass parkland style golf course. And it's not really a great piece of land for a golf course. It was built on a reclaimed gravel pit, but the golf course was designed in 2001. So it's a modern TPC style golf course. Like this is very different from the previous Canadian Open venues, which were this very much old school Stanley Thompson golden age architecture. And this golf course is modern TPC style architecture, which is generally super, super uncreative. And I'm telling you right now, the comp for this golf course from an architecture standpoint and a required skill set standpoint is TPC Craig Ranch. And the reason why it's so similar to a golf course like TPC Craig Ranch is two main things: the architecture style, the style of TPC bland, very straightforward architecture, and the required skill set, which is basically length, right? And this golf course has large greens, large flat greens, and large fairways. And it's just long, right? I don't think it's going to be overly easy because the golf course is playing as a par 70, two of the par fives that it normally plays for regular members or I think it's public. I think it might be private, but anyway, the point is for the regular amateurs that play this golf course every day, it's a par 72, and they have made it a par 70 for PGA Tour pros and turned two shortish, reachable par fives into two par fours that measure over 515 yards. And if you look at how the Canadian Open has set up its golf courses every year, none of the golf courses for Canadian Opens are birdie fests. It's a proud tournament, a national open. And if we look at TPC Toronto compared to some of the other previous Canadian Open venues, like the last 3 years have been Hamilton, Oakdale, and St. George's. Like I mentioned, those three golf courses are old school, classical, golden age venues on tighter and smaller properties, more narrow fairways, smaller greens, more positional, just more claustrophobic, tighter pieces of property. And TPC Toronto is big and wide, and it has wider fairways and larger greens. And I think it is going to be a lot more bomber friendly of a golf course where you can gain a real advantage off the tee here by being long. Like I actually think of all of the Canadian Open venues of the last couple of years, this is really the best golf course for Rory McIlroy. And he's going to be damn tough to beat this week. And if you look at the par fours on this golf course, I went through, there's some good flyovers on the website, and I went through and mapped out every single hole, what I expect the strategy to be on every single hole, and what I expect the average proximity distance coming in to be. And it's long. 6 of the 12 par fours on this golf course are longer than 480 yards and legitimate long par fours. And the golf course has thick enough rough that the shorter players, while the fairways are wide, the shorter players are going to have to hit long irons out of thick rough. And so anytime you have a golf course where if you miss the fairway, there is enough of a missed fairway penalty, and the golf course is long enough where your approach shot coming in is going to have to be with a middle to long iron. And that is the case at TPC Toronto. Like when I mapped out the golf course, I basically had around 8 approach shots coming from 200 yards plus. And overall, I had a long iron percentage of 39%. If I break down the proximity buckets, I had 2 of 18 shots coming from inside 100 yards, 3 of 18 between 100 and 150, 6 of 18 between 150 and 200, and 7 of 18 200 yards plus. So, the thing about this golf course that I think is the main defining feature and what you want to focus on this week over anything else is long iron approach play and overall off the tee performance, because it's a golf course where you can gain a real advantage off the tee if you are long and straight. And number 2, you are going to have a lot of high leverage long iron approach shots down the stretch. Like if you look at the last couple of holes on this golf course, the finishing 3 holes are 513-yard par 4, 530-yard par 4, and 581-yard par 5. That is a little bit risk reward, where if you're able to hit the green in 2 shots on the 18th hole, you're going to gain a real advantage. So the last 3 shots on this golf course are 3 very high leverage long iron approach shots, and 2 of the par 5s of the par 3s measure 237 yards and 225 yards. Both very important high leverage long iron shots. And the first hole, for example, is a risk reward par 5 that only measures 542 yards. And you can gain, that's a great hole for a draw. Like it's certainly going to be reachable by most players off the tee, but you can actually cut the corner of that dog leg with a big draw. It kind of reminds me of the first hole of Quail Hollow in a way. But the main thing that I want to emphasize on this golf course above all else, if you take anything away from this preview, take this, is that they have just made this golf course very long. And the thing about length is that, as we see every year with TPC Craig Ranch, length on its own is not going to be enough to test PGA Tour players. In fact, golf courses like Vidanta Vallarta and TPC Craig Ranch are the best and Valhalla are the best comparisons to this golf course, because those are all golf courses where you have a lot of long iron approach shots, but they're very straightforward, easy approach shots. They're just long. So the guys that play well every single year at TPC Craig Ranch, Vedanta Vallarta, and Valhalla, those are the players that you want to look at, because it's really just mindless, bomb away. Can you execute with a long iron? The architecture, the challenge of the golf course is not there. It's just long. And so, in terms of scoring this week, you know, I think it's going to play somewhat similar to the scoring that we had at Valhalla, for example. So Valhalla ended up being what, 19 under par. And Valhalla and was a par 71. So maybe this plays a touch harder than Valhalla because it's a par 70 instead of a par 71. But Valhalla is such a perfect comp for TPC Toronto because it's a golf course that has very bland, banal architecture with wide fairways and enough thick rough of a penalty where if you miss the fairways, you're going to be having to hit long irons out of thick rough. And it's just flat greens. And the golf course is going to be relatively soft as well because you're getting a bunch of rainfall this week in the area on Thursday that may even butt into Thursday's play. And so you look at Valhalla, how that finished, and it actually ended up being 21 under because I'm looking at it right now, where Xander shot 21 under par. Bryson came in second at 20 under par. Hovland came in third at 18 under par. And the scoring average for that week ended up being minus 0.72. And that's the comp, in my opinion, because Valhalla is a golf course that features very straightforward, flat greens, very easy greens with no slope or undulation to them, relatively wide enough fairways. Like the fairways, the average width here for these fairways are 37 yards at Valhalla, 37 yards wide. At Valhalla, it was 38 yards wide. And the percentage of long iron approach shots at Valhalla was around 42%. And this golf course, I believe, is going to have a long iron approach percentage of 39%. So in terms of the architecture of the golf course, the width of the fairways, the flatness of the greens, even similar rough penalty, like the length of the rough at Valhalla and the agronomy of the rough at Valhalla is pretty much exactly the same to what you're going to see at TPC Toronto. And straight up at Valhalla, the main things were distance, long iron play, and putting. That's it. Okay. And that is the main story this week as well. Distance, long iron play, and putting. And realistically, I say distance, but it is really a overall off the tee golf course because the fairways are wide enough where there is going, and the missed fairway penalty is great enough where you can gain an advantage on this golf course by being hyper accurate and being able to hit a bunch of long irons, from the short grass as opposed to the thick rough. But in terms of the required skill set, in terms of the scoring and how that tournament actually broke down, it's exactly like Valhalla. And you could say the same thing. Like if I was describing Valhalla, I would say Muirfield Village meets TPC Craig Ranch. And aesthetics, agronomy, architecture style, or aesthetics and agronomy, really, of TPC Craig Ranch, or excuse me, of Muirfield Village, and architecture style of TPC Craig Ranch. And that is it for TPC Toronto. That's really what you need to take away here if you're taking away anything. Number one, above all else, if you're giving me one skill to focus on this week that is going to define the outcome of this tournament, it's long iron approach play. There are just so many high leverage long iron shots on this golf course. The 2 long par 3s, the 2 reachable par 5s, and then these 6 par 4s that measure over 480 yards. Long iron play, number one. And that was, again, the star of the show at Valhalla. You look at that closing leaderboard, and it's just long iron merchants: Xander, Bryson, Hovland, Morikawa, even Shane Lowry and Justin Thomas. Number 2, total driving with an emphasis on length over accuracy. I definitely would want length over accuracy on this golf course because, it's kind of just full send, bombs away. The golf course is long enough to the point where there's going to be a big delta on your proximity approach shots, and if you have length versus if you don't have length. Like, a longer player is going to have a lot of approach shots, around 175 yards, and a shorter player is going to have a lot of approach shots around 200 yards. And the delta in that difference between coming in from 175 versus coming in from 200 is a big deal, right? The golf courses that really test length are golf courses that are long, right? It's not rocket science, and it's a good inverse to a golf course like Philly Cricket, for example, which I kept talking about how at Philly Cricket, the reason why Philly Cricket is not going to test length, and it didn't. I was right on the money about Philly Cricket not at all being about length, but being completely about short iron approach play, is because the difference in scoring, if you're long from 75 yards versus 125 yards, is not a big deal. But the difference, if you're long at a golf course like this, between 175 yards and 225 yards, you have such a big advantage if you are the guy hitting from 175 in versus the guy hitting 225 yards in. So, long iron play, number one, total driving with an emphasis on distance over accuracy, and then putting as well, because the greens in regulation percentage is going to be around 65%. It's exactly like what we saw at Valhalla. Is you have a driving accuracy percentage of 66% and a greens in regulation percentage of 65%. And anytime you have a greens in regulation percentage over 60%, it's also a golf course where you can separate quite a bit with your putter. And I do think there's going to be at least 1 or 2 players on the leaderboard this week, exactly like what we saw at Valhalla, that just get crazy hot on the greens and are able to make a million putts and take advantage of the higher greens in regulation percentage. At Valhalla that week, it was Justin Rose and Billy Horschel. And this week at TPC Craig Toronto, you're going to have the exact same thing, where there's going to be 1 or 2 players in the top 10 that are able to just separate with their putter, and the rest of the guys are going to be bombers and long iron players. So if you look actually at that leaderboard for Valhalla, there's a couple guys in the field that I think are super viable this week. Thomas Dietrich finished 4th. This is a phenomenal golf course for Thomas Dietrich. Bobby Mack finished 8th, and Bobby Mack could go back to back. Like, this is a better golf course on paper for Bobby Mack than the golf in terms of his required skill set, than the golf course that he won the Canadian Open at last year. So anyway, that's the main thing that I want everybody to take away from this golf course, from this preview, and how the golf course is going to play, is that this is a golf course that is completely defined by the fact that it is long. Okay. Nothing, the architecture is very banal, normal, straightforward architecture, just bomb away. A lot of straight holes and a lot of slightly curving holes. I do think it's more of a drawers golf course off the tee than it is a faders golf course off the tee. But like, there are a couple holes on the front nine where if you hit a big, high towering draw like Rory, number 1 and number 3 come to mind, where it's kind of perfect for them. But then there's a couple holes on the back nine where it's more preferable for a fade. So again, it's like the same thing that you see at Valhalla and TPC Craig Ranch. It's just bombs away here. And it's a tournament that is defined by the best long iron players. So if we dive into the model, you're going to see a lot of players on that model that, have performed well at golf courses like TPC Craig Ranch and Valhalla, and even, Vedanta Vallarta, because Vedanta Vallarta is the exact same thing, where it's basically just like, it's long. That's it. Like, that's the challenge of the golf course, is that you're just hitting a bunch of long iron approach shots. Are the approach shots like actually hard? Are they to greens that are small or firm or undulating? No, they're just long, right? And that is how TPC Craig Ranch is defined, how Vedanta Vallarta is defined, how Valhalla is defined, is that the architecture is very straightforward and banal, but you're going to have to just hit a bunch of good long iron shots. So let's take a very quick break, and then I will finish up running through the top 20 in my model. Okay, so the model, you can see all of the breakdown and the full model on betspertsgolf.com. It's out there. We have a 25% off code inside golf for BetSperts as well, and you can see my full model there. But let's run through it. Number 1, Rory McIlroy, just obvious, best player in the field by a healthy margin. And I actually think that this venue is a better venue for Rory McIlroy than a lot of the previous Canadian Open venues that we've seen. Like, he won at St. George's, I believe, right? And this is a way better golf course for Rory than St. George's was, in terms of how he's going to be able to separate with his power off the tee and his long irons. But then you get Connors, Lowry, Pendrith, Aubert. Okay. And like I mentioned, like, I don't think this is really the perfect golf course for Corey Connors or Shane Lowry. Like, I'm not going to bet either of those guys this week, even though Shane Lowry was phenomenal at Valhalla, but they're just the best players in the field. Like, it's not a very strong field. Like, it's basically Rory, Ludwig, Lowry, and Connors. Those are going to be the top 4 guys on the odds board. And I would guess that Rory's going to be around 5-1, depending on how Ludwig plays on Sunday at Memorial, and he's off to a pretty good start. Ludwig, Lowry, and Connors are going to be the next 3 guys on the odds board, and they are all going to be somewhere between 16 to 1 and 25 to 1. And I think it's a pass for all 3 of those guys for me. Like, if I had to choose between those 3 guys, it would be Ludwig, because Ludwig has the most power off the tee and the ability to separate, not just with his long irons, but with his driver as well. That's kind of why I would put him above Connors and Lowry. But then you get into number 4, which is Pendrith. And I may bet Taylor Pendrith. I am a huge Taylor Pendrith guy. Taylor Pendrith has won at TPC Craig Ranch before. Taylor Pendrith was massive for me and a huge key piece in helping me have such a good week at Quail Hollow. And he's, again, I played him at Muirfield Village, and he's having a pretty good week at Muirfield Village as well. So if we are talking about a Canadian winning the Canadian Open, this sets up perfectly for Pendrith. This is a way better golf course for Taylor Pendrith than it is for Nick Taylor, for Mackenzie Hughes. I would even argue Corey Connors. Corey Connors is just a better overall player than Pendrith. But in terms of like who this really favors based on skill set, Pendrith, I think Pendy might win. Pendy is probably a bet for me. And then you go Keith Mitchell, Bobby Mack, Doug Gim, Gary Woodland, Kurt Kitayama, Alex Smalley. And that's where you get those long iron merchants. Okay. Keith Mitchell, long iron merchant and has power off the tee. Bobby Mack, long iron merchant and has power off the tee. Gary Woodland, power off the tee and long irons. Kurt Kitayama, power off the tee and long irons. Alex Smalley, power off the tee and long irons. And then you get Sungjae M, Ricky Castillo, who's Ricky Katz is probably my favorite sleeper play of the week. He murdered me at Colonial. Like, he was in a very good 6 of 6 at Colonial, and he shot like 7 over on Sunday. I'm going right back to Ricky Katz on this golf course. Ricky Katz was awesome at TPC Craig Ranch. Okay. And the reason why Ricky Katz was awesome at TPC Craig Ranch, and the reason why he's popping for me again this week, is he's got power off the tee and he's a great long iron player. And then we finish off with 14 Kevin Yu, 15 Alex Noren, 16 Antoine Rosner, another great sleeper this week who is awesome at TPC Craig Ranch as well. Watch out for Antoine Rosner. And then some of these other guys are like power off the tee and good long irons. These are great sleepers. Matty Schmidt, Nicholas Norgard, Danny Walker. All of those guys have a lot of power off the tee and are above average long iron players. And that's all you need this week. 19 Danny Walker, 20 Sam Burns. So as you can see from this model and the types of players that I'm looking for, it's very Vedanta, Vallarta, Valhalla, TPC Craig Ranch. That's the angle I'm looking for this week. And I believe we'll be right about that. I mean, I feel quite strongly about how this golf course is going to play and the types of players that you want to be looking at. And the angle that I am taking this week is give me guys who hit the ball a long way off the tee and are just straight up long iron merchants. I don't think you need to be a good putter, and I don't think you need to have a particularly great short game whatsoever. I think the scrambling percentage is going to be quite high. Like, outside of being a good bunker player, the actual around the green shots, very straightforward, just hack out rough. Very easy short game course. So that's how I feel about the track. And I think that Taylor Pendrith is my early lean as your winner. Give us another Canadian winning the Canada Open. I think Pendy has a phenomenal shot this week. And then in terms of the other guys that I would consider betting, Bobby Mack to go back to back, absolutely viable. Keith Mitchell, great spot for Keith Mitchell. He can't win a golf tournament for shit, but I think it's a phenomenal golf course for him. And then in terms of, DFS plays and maybe potential bets like Woodland, Kitayama, Smalley, Ricky Katz, Kevin Yu, Matty Schmidt, Antoine Rosner, Nicholas Norgard, Danny Walker, all those guys that you play at TPC Craig Ranch and at Vidanta Vallarta, those are your guys this week. That's the angle I'm taking. So that will do it for me. I got to go catch a flight pretty much right now. I hope this breakdown was on the golf course was helpful for you. If it was, and you want more of this and an even more in-depth look at the golf course, we would love to have you join ISN this week. I promise you, for these next 2 weeks at this golf course and Oakmont, you will not be more prepared in terms of how the golf course is going to play than the position that we are going to put you in at Inside Sports Network between Steve and I, and all of that magic as the week goes on, comes from being a part of that community and in the Discord channel and the information that we provide to our members only. This is kind of just, the entry point, the scratching the surface of, hopefully, if you like what you were hearing in this podcast and the level of information that you were getting, we'd love to have you, like I said, join our crazy family at ISN. So InsideSportsNetwork.com. Best of luck with your bets and DFS lineups this afternoon at Muirfield Village. And we will see you back on this podcast feed tomorrow. Cheers.